This is the MeatEater Podcast coming at you shirtless, severely bug-bitten, and in my case, underwearless.
We hunt the MeatEater Podcast.
You can't predict anything. Brought to you by First Light. When I'm hunting, I need gear that won't quit. First Light builds no compromise gear that keeps me in the field longer. No shortcuts, just gear that works. Check it out at firstlight.com. That's FIRSTLITE.com. Joined today by Caleb Hubbard, a veterinarian entomologist of the Hubbard Entomology Lab at New Mexico State University. We're here to talk about the screwworm. Can we call it an epidemic, pandemic? How it's going to kill everybody?
No, I don't think
how,
that you
like make it
necessarily
seem good, like make it seem vital.
Well, I think one of the things is that I'm trying not to cause panic. I think that's kind of the biggest thing. But it is a kind of a big problem. So the screwworm fly is this parasitic fly that feeds on living flesh. The U.S. had done a really good job of pushing it out of the United States, out of Mexico, down to Panama. We've kind of been holding it there for the last 20 or so years. But since 2023, we've essentially had cases of it that have been occurring. There's been 15,000 or so cases in Mexico. And as of November of this year, there was a case 60 miles from the U.S. border. So it's
coming to a cow near you.
Correct. Yeah. And if you look on the USDA's APHIS website, they say it's not a concern of getting into the U.S., but we do have cases that are close. And so it's something that getting the information out there is kind of the biggest thing about it.
Yeah, when I've read about it in the news, they make it seem like, when we reached out wanting to get someone about screwworms, reading about it in the news, it's like moving at an alarming rate.
Yeah.
Coming to a cow near you.
Yeah, very much so. Or a cow or any wildlife or humans or Fido, your dog. So it'll pretty much feed on any vertebrate. They say even birds, but for the most part, it's going to be your larger animals, your companion animals, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Okay, we're gonna dig in on that. This is good. And a veterinarian, just so folks know, an entomologist. Explain what an entomologist is.
Yeah. So an entomologist is someone that studies insects or bugs in different ways. My background's veterinary entomology, so that means that I work with really all the pests that cause disease or are problematic in animals. Traditionally, we're working with livestock, so cattle, poultry, things like that. But I'm actually at New Mexico State. I'm hired as an urban entomologist, so that's all the creepy crawlies that kind of bother you in and around your home. So if that's bed bugs, cockroaches, scorpions, anything like that. But I justify also that something like screwworm or my background is in flies. No one likes flies in their house, and so it's kind of like any of that interaction with humans, and so that's where I come in with all this kind of screwworm stuff.
But you got just thrown hardcore into the screwworm situation, though.
I would say that I got thrown into it, but I think I initially volunteered and then was kind of voluntold to kind of go
because
through
this
this
is a major
process.
issue.
It is, and it's kind of one of those things of making myself kind of available to do whatever. I'm new to New Mexico. I just moved to New Mexico in August, and I don't know. I'm really enjoying the state overall, but I don't know where I heard this, or maybe I just came up with it. New Mexico's number one at being last at everything. If it kind of comes to education, if it comes to a lot of things like that.
He's not ingratiating himself.
No, but here's my thing: is that my goal here is to make New Mexico not that when it comes to screwworm. Is that we should be prepared. That we should be able to be. Be able to get this information out there, especially to a group of people that aren't being reached out to, hunters and outdoorsmen in general. And so my goal with communicating all of this is to situate New Mexico in a place that we can be prepared because we don't have the finances like Texas does. We don't have kind of the resources that our neighbors do. And so it's, getting all of this information out there because, I'm only one person. And so New Mexico obviously is a huge state and we have a lot of economic activity when it comes to hunting and outdoors. Yeah. And so it's reaching out to all of those people and kind of, I can't do it alone. And so that's kind of my goal here is to make New Mexico into a state that we can be an example for everybody else.
All right. So we're going to dig into heavy on screwworms. But first, we got to talk about a couple things. So first, Doug, give me your hand. Phil, zoom in on this.
Oh, I was right.
Listen,
I was right.
I lost.
I was right.
Not yet.
I thought you were asking me
I'll
to
tell you
marry
when
you
it's
or
time.
something.
I'll
there
tell
for
you
a
when it's
minute.
time. I was at the sheep show. Okay, Wild Sheep Foundation convention deal, trade show.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm doing this little thing, signing books, taking pictures and whatnot. And these dudes come up, and I had seen them around because they're all dressed up like gunfighters. Spurs.
And you notice that kind of thing.
Yeah. All dressed up like Wild West gunfighters. With this gal's carrying a stuffed raccoon around. Costumes. Pretty soon I take note that they're in line to come up and chat. This gentleman explains that what they do is they're the people that put on at a ghost town. See, they have their own Virginia City down there. Like we have a Virginia City. We have a ghost town. They have one too. So he says Virginia City, and I'm thinking ours, but he means theirs. Explains that they're the people that do the gun, they put on like the gunfight, the Wild West gunfight. And they happen to show up in their
Re-enactors. Yeah.
Re-enactors.
Yep.
So he hands me this, gives me his business card, and I lose it. So this, I think that he invented this. If you want, I lost his damn business card, but he's a gunfighter in Virginia City, Nevada, and he runs around in Reno, and he dresses up like a gunfighter. I think that people can prove me wrong. I think he invented this. I'm holding a weasel here. Hold out your arm now, Doug.
All right.
It's a slap brace.
Do it again.
Yeah.
Here's a
For
pine
those of
squirrel.
You want the other arm or you?
Yeah, the other arm.
Here,
Now,
we need to have.
I think he invented that.
We need to have it sound here, just for the audio audience. Put it near the mic. Yeah.
If he invented that, he deserves a Nobel Prize in taxidermy, dude.
Okay, sorry. Can't really hear it.
My daughter is going to lose her mind when she sees that.
I wondered why I was here. Now I know.
What do you think of that?
I don't know. I think it looks good on me.
These are tube skinned. We got a tube skinned ermine, a tube skinned pine squirrel, converted into slap bracelets. I think I met the inventor. But you can never trust a reenactor. Do you know what I'm saying? When was the last time? Tell me, when was the last time a reenactor? Because it's they inherently are living a lie.
I know a couple of those guys.
Yeah, you can't trust a reenactor.
Yeah, I don't know. I trust both
I'm
of those
joking.
guys.
I'm joking mostly. Okay, Doug's here. So I did that. Oh, a couple of announcements to make. In 3 days, okay. I'm going to be I was just talking about being at the Wild Sheep Show, Wild Sheep Foundation show. If you on YouTube watched or wherever you watch stuff, our Tanzania hunts, the guy I was hunting in Tanzania with is Morgan Potter. He's the professional hunter I was with. Great guy. Very funny, very smart, great guy. He and I are doing a talk at Safari Club International in Nashville, Tennessee. So Safari Club International has like a convention. I don't know what they call it. Yeah, I think they call it a convention. The SCI show. Morgan and I are going to do a talk about our experiences, kind of like from the perspective of someone that doesn't know anything, like an idiot, like me, an Africa idiot, and an Africa expert. And we're going to give a lecture at Safari Club on February 19th. We're all the money, so you got to get a ticket, but all the money goes to the SCI. So what you got to do is you got to go on SCI's website and you got to get, like, you become a member, and that allows you to go to the show, and then you'll see you can get a ticket to come to our talk. Again, doesn't go to me, to Morgan. All the money goes to SCI. It's a nonprofit, hunting rights, some conservation work organization. Check that out. So, also, more news. MeatEater Podcast is going to 2 times weekly, starting March 9th. Somewhat, this is cringeworthy, somewhat replacing Radio Live. What you're going to have the interview show, which is like right now we're fixing to talk to this veterinarian entomologist. Well, you know who I want you to turn me on to? Do you have any colleagues who are forensic entomologists that study like how to tell how long a guy's body's been laying there?
Yeah. It's an interesting field. There's only a couple people that do forensic entomology. We did some forensic entomology where I did my PhD. My PhD advisor developed a class and kind of did some of that. But there's really only 5 or 6 people that kind of do it as a career. There's one guy at Texas A&M, Jeff Tomberlin, who kind of is one of the forensic entomology people. He's actually doing some stuff with poaching in Africa.
And really?
Yeah. And so
are you buddies with him?
I am. Yeah, actually, I have a call with him tomorrow.
Can you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of grease the wheels a little bit for me?
Absolutely.
All right. You don't know any Neanderthal experts, do you?
Unfortunately, no.
What was I getting at? Oh, we're splitting the show. So we're going to have the regular interview show like we have now. Then we're going to have a news show. So we're having a news and commentary show, which will come out every week, very close to it being recorded. Okay. And the news and commentary show will allow us to, we're going to be doing, it's the same crew from Radio Live, but we're going to, much of the same individuals from Radio Live, but it's not beholden to a certain place and time. And it's going to be new current events, dominated by current events. So you'll be able to get up-to-date news and commentary at the news show. So 2 drops per week. The energy that goes into Radio Live will transfer over to the news and commentary show. That all starts March 9th. We're also fixing up a brand new studio. So you'll see that there's like a new studio area too in connection to all this. Got a correction.
Really quick, sorry, Steve, before you get into this. Could we get cell phones off the table? We're getting a little bit of fuzz.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. No, you're good. I should have warned you before.
Oh, where's the correction that I said was kind of dumb because it wasn't a good correction?
Oh, here, let me find.
Where'd that go?
Let me find that. I didn't put that in.
Oh, why not? I said I want to talk about it, but it's dumb.
I forgot to do that.
Oh.
Something about the wolf?
No, here's a correction.
No, it was
Colorado Wolf Recovery Goals, episode 820 correction. Okay. Ready for this? He even tells me that I can feel free to fact check this. And it's like a sort of correction. He says, at the end of the episode, you guys were discussing Colorado's wolf reintroduction. The end of episode 820. And Steve mentioned that CPW's, Colorado Parks and Wildlife's, goal for wolves is 30 to 50. He says this is only partially true. Okay. But he's right. This is a correction. The reintroduction goal in Colorado to reintroduction goal is to reintroduce 30 to 50, not to establish a population of 30 to 50. The goal is to cut 30 to 50 loose. Okay. That's not the stated recovery goal. He goes on. This is me quoting him. In fact, there is no official number for a desired population in the finalized plan for a recovery goal. However, there are only guidelines for downlisting from the state endangered species list, okay? If they have at least 50 wolves for 4 years, they can downlist to state threatened status. If they maintain a population of at least 150 wolves for 2 years, they will delist from the state endangered species list. He goes on to say, I was saying that, and I stand by this, I was saying in Colorado, unless 60% of the people in Colorado move away, and those are replaced by Utahns and Nevadans or something, those are replaced by a different strain of human, you will never see a hunting season for wolves in Colorado. I stand by that. I gave that as a piece of opinion. He says, though, once the wolf is delisted in Colorado, so that once they hit that 150 wolves for 2 years, he says, there is supposed to be, and I'm quoting here, consideration for making wolves a game species. But he goes on to say, and this is a wildlife professional. I don't want to give his name. This is a state wildlife professional that wrote this in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna. What do you call that nowadays?
Out him.
Dox him.
Dox him. Oh, yeah.
I'm not gonna dox his brother. He says, but if we've learned anything from wolf policy in the past, there will be much litigation and hogwash to prevent management of wolves by hunting. So even though the stated number is a bit higher than Steve said, and there is in fact a provision in the plan to consider reclassification to a game species, it does seem likely that the wolf population will continue to increase significantly with no clear final goal having been set. Here's a correction from Florida that's a great, that's the kind of, see, pretty soon we're going to start a correction of the week contest.
Yeah, I like that one.
That guy he was a winner.
Yeah.
He was a winner.
It was all my bad because I put it in the notes, kind of not clearly.
What did?
Me, when I put the 30 to 50 goal, I'd put it under
no, that's fine.
Yeah, I'd put
You
it
don't need
under.
to take the bullet.
No, well, that's part of it, but the guy's right, so it's good. There were probably people in the audience saying, no, and they're right. You guys are all right.
Where was I?
Florida.
Okay. Here's a correction that would not win. Oh, we need to get, I was talking to Brody. I was talking to Brody the other day. We need like a new, do we have our own email address for the podcast?
Yes.
What is it called?
The MeatEater Podcast at themeateater.com.
Where do those go?
They all filter mainly to our community manager.
But do we get all of those?
Mm-hmm.
We get all of those.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh, no, I ask him to filter stuff.
Well, don't.
Well,
I don't know that he knows what I think is interesting. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, what is the risk? Like, the risk would be because my wife doesn't think what I think is interesting is interesting. What's that?
I've asked him to cast a wide net and forward me a bunch of different funky, weird things.
Yeah.
I think he knows.
Because out of every 10 things that I think is interesting, I tell my wife, she finds 9 not interesting.
Mm-hmm, sure.
You can't trust. I'm not equating him to my wife. I'm just saying, like, no two people are the same.
That's true.
Here's a not winner. This guy, in fact, would the opposite of win. Correction of the week.
You're going to correct his correction?
I am.
Take note, guys.
His correction. His correction is titled "Misrepresenting Opposition to the Florida Bear Hunt." He goes on, I enjoy your show.
Compliment sandwich.
Yeah, that's
right.
That's right.
Open
I enjoy
face
your
compliment,
show.
Yeah.
But feel the need to offer you a new perspective on a story you recently reported on. As a resident of rural Florida, I'm surrounded by the controversy surrounding our state's recent black bear hunt. While you presented thoughtful views on the battle between those who support and oppose bear hunting in Florida, I feel you overlooked an important concept in the argument. He goes on. Though I don't bear hunt, I'm a lifelong hunter and angler. In addition, my professional training is in fish and wildlife management, and my previous career had me frequently collaborating with wildlife managers nationwide. In addition, I currently work at an environmentally focused nonprofit, so I rub elbows with a diverse group of outdoor-minded individuals. He could win a composition.
Yeah, this sounds like Midwest passive-aggressive to me, though.
Well, if he was going toe-to-toe with most of the people that write us a letter, he would win a composition award.
Sure.
Not to hack. I prefer like when it looks like E.E. Cummings wrote in.
Yeah.
Yeah. While you report, did I say that already? Oh, okay. He goes on. While your reporting included key details behind the, quote, animal rights folks opposing the bear hunt, it left out a glaring reason why so many Floridians oppose it in general. The hunt is being broadcast as an example of animal populations outgrowing their habitat when, in most cases, it's actually a case of habitat being reduced around the animals. He goes on. See, Doug doesn't know where it's going to fall.
I read it, but now I've
He's
forgotten
nodding
everything.
along.
Yeah.
He doesn't know if he's going to agree with him or not.
Yeah, well, that's
It's going to pit me against Doug. He goes on.
have an open mind about this.
Outsiders have certainly heard of the development happening all across Central Florida. But believe me, unless you have lived it, you have no way to comprehend the complete eradication of fish and wildlife habitat occurring daily throughout this state. He goes on. Florida's development-friendly building codes allow for thousands of acres to be cleared and developed at an incredible pace. Make no mistake, this is no way environmentally sensible development. This is clear-cut, corner-to-corner, bulldozed, filled, and compacted development, seemingly everywhere. When developers clear land in Florida, no wildlife is left. Nothing, not a bug, a bird, and certainly not a bear. I don't agree. I don't disagree with any of this. He hasn't gotten to the part.
I'm waiting.
He hasn't gotten to the correction yet. He's just laying the groundwork. Here's the clincher. Here's where he brings it home. Bear habitat is being removed at an unheard of pace. His words here. That's the majority of what's behind opposition to the hunt. Floridians, hunters, and anglers alike view wildlife policy in this state as a failure due to continued declining habitat, the likes of which have never been seen in the South. Many hunters I know oppose the bear hunt for this very reason. It's viewed as a cop-out by the fish and wildlife managers and an excuse for declining habitat. It's important this opposition to the hunt is represented correctly because many of them are hunters themselves. Here's where you're no. If you still hunt deer and you still hunt turkeys and you still fish, what you're saying isn't true. They're losing habitat too.
Sure.
So are you quitting all hunting out of protest for the state not getting a grip on development? How are you saying, oh no, I oppose having a bear season, but I support having a deer season. I support having a turkey season. Come on.
Yeah.
No. It's just totally not true. Unless this guy writes in. If he writes in and says to me, oh no, here's a correction to your correction, to my correction. And it's that I have quit all hunting. I boycott any kind of hunting and fishing in Florida out of a protest to rampant development in Florida, then I'll say, okay, I believe you. But there's no way that's true. You're not. It's like you're not willing intellectually. You're sort of holding out that a bear is somehow different than a state-managed game animal because of your perceptions.
The animals are dealing with loss of habitat.
They all
are. Right. And so you have more animals competing or on less habitat. Consequently, you have overpopulation.
You know why he's also wrong? He's also wrong because the total number of bears, if what he was saying was true, you would be, I mean, it is true. I'm not
the premise,
development in Florida is out of control. From an environmental conservation standpoint, it's in rough shape. The state is in rough shape.
Mm-hmm.
Development's out of control. 100%. But that is not what the bears, like right now, that is not what the bears are, like bear numbers in Florida are growing. Bear numbers in Florida are growing.
Is that right?
Yeah, bear numbers in Florida. Black bear numbers in general around the country. Bears are moving into new places. Regionally, like they're moving in new places locally, and they're moving into new places more broadly.
So they're pretty adaptive. Yeah.
It's taken them 150 years to figure out how to deal with people, but they're figuring it out.
Mm-hmm.
And like he's just mixing up two things. Another one. This is a little more science. You might like this one. We'll get to the whole screwworm thing. Don't worry, dude. Alan Lazara, who's come on before, he's an ER doctor. He's an ER doctor, and he's been on the show. He has a particular focus and done a lot of work in tree stand injuries.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting guy. He wrote in, there's this new treatment coming out for frostbitten hands and feet. The reason I'm bringing this up, because people that like to cook wild game, I mean, cooks in general, but a lot of my buddies who are avid wild game cooks use sous vide machines, sous vide wands to hold water at a very specific temperature, right? Like if you're trying to hold, if I told you, hey, put water on your stove and hold a pot of water on your stove at 139 degrees for 3 days, you're not going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
If you put a sous vide apparatus in a pot of water and you set it at 39 degrees for 3 days, that son of a bitch is going to be 39 degrees for 3 days, 139 degrees for 3 days. There's some new stuff, and it just was published in the Academy, Academic Emergency Medicine Journal, about seemingly having great luck rewarming frozen body parts in sous vide baths. Because you can get the perfect temperature
And hold it.
Because anyone that's ever frozen your fingers, you stick them in hot water, that is not the way to go.
No.
Painful. So he's pointing out, like, he's not, Dr. Lazara is not suggesting that you go get in.
Here comes a disclaimer.
Yeah.
But, okay. This is from the journal. Rewarming frostbitten tissue with skin-to-skin contact or warm water. Okay. Treatment includes removing the person from the cold environment and rewarming frostbitten tissue with skin-to-skin contact or warm water immersion. Okay. Rubbing, no good. Typically, in the emergency department or field, this is accomplished with a warm water bath that is frequently exchanged to target a water temperature. Son of a bitch, you put it in Celsius.
Because you have to exchange because you're not holding the temperature.
No. Check this out. You're trying. They're trying to get water at 98.6. I didn't know this.
Makes sense.
So you freeze your hand, you freeze your fingers. The medical treatment would be to try to get water at 98.6, stick your hand in there. And then he says they're constantly swapping it out with new water. But there's a dry heat, no good. Like holding it to a fire, not advisable. Rubbing it, not advisable. Skin to skin contact or a water bath at 98.6. He says typically in an emergency room setting, you're swapping out the water. Here, set your sous vide at 98.6. Just in the winter, turn it on, put it in the garage.
Good to go, yeah.
Every time you freeze your fingers, come in, dunk them in there.
It sounds like a big whirlpool to me, yeah.
It kind of reminds me of Star Wars. Luke Skywalker,
Sure.
kind of, he was on Hoth and they stuck him in that
Got
thing.
wicked cold.
Yeah,
It's called the
Yeah.
back to tank.
Yeah, okay, there you go. And it seems like, they're just taking it from Star Wars.
I'm
Whoever
sure.
these scientists were.
Yeah, they were hot on the sous vide before anybody else was.
Yeah.
Here's a quick comment, and then we're all in on screwworms. Speaking of Dr. Lazara, a guy just wrote in. He was listening way back into the deep cuts. He was back in episode 192 with Dr. Alan Lazara, and episode 192 was called "Bleeding Out" with Dr. Alan Lazara. In it, we had a discussion about bluegills biting men's nipples.
I remember this.
Okay. This guy wrote in from Michigan. He actually calls them bluegales.
I wondered if that was a spelling error when I was reading the notes.
And Brody said, do people in Michigan call them bluegales? And I'm like, I think they kind of a little bit do, but you'd also call them a gill.
Yeah.
But there is a little bit of a bluegale. No, bluegills. No, I can't think of that. I get what he's getting at, but I think it's a pretty clean bluegill.
Yep.
Bluegill. Or you'd say gills. This guy has this to say. He says, almost every man that swam in my grandpa's pond has had this happen to him, me included. Is this a correction? No, it's like an observation.
Yep.
He's a fabricator.
It was a note.
He's a fabricator. It's a note. I'll critique it in a minute, but first I'll tell you what the note is. He says, the pond was stocked only with bluegills, which were fed little fish pellets by my grandparents. We attributed the nipple biting to the similar appearance of these pellets to hard nipples in cold water. We believed the fish would mistake the nipple for a pellet and bite us. We would almost always come out of the water looking like a marathon runner who forgot to put tape on their nipples. This pond, he brings it even tighter to home. This pond happens to be just 30 minutes south of Ann Arbor, where Dr. Lazara was working. Lest you question the relevance.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I don't think that's it. I think I agree that that's your assumption, but plenty of nipples have been bitten in plenty of ponds that aren't fed. These are wild fish biting nipples.
Body hair seems to attract them, too. I've been bit, like, on different parts of my body in those kinds of ponds with...
You ever been skinny dipping and had your pecker bit?
No.
Me neither.
Yeah.
Lucky you guys.
All right. Okay, back to screwworms.
It always comes around, man.
Yeah.
Always does.
How long, as screwworms are progressing northward, as you explained?
Yeah.
How long has there, like, what is the early understanding of screwworms, and how long have humans been talking about screwworms?
Yeah.
And where have they been talking about screwworms?
Yeah. So it's called primary screwworm or New World screwworm because it's a problem of the Americas.
Okay.
And so the first kind of like true documented case was actually in French Guiana in a penal colony. So in 1858, the French kind of noted, oh, hey, yeah, we have these prisoners that are being eaten alive by something.
Humans.
Yeah, humans. We have no idea what it is. And so they sent in this guy, Cockerell, who ended up like realizing that they were fly maggots and kind of described it there. And then it kind of went dormant for, I guess, whatever that math would be, 60 or 70 years. And so then it was the 1930s in the U.S. that we started documenting these cases where we were seeing cattle that were being infested. And so pretty much since about the 30s is kind of like when it's been on our radar of being this big problem. And then from the 30s to about the early 1970s was kind of the heyday of control. They developed this thing called sterile insect technique to get rid of the flies. And then since the 70s, at least in the US, we pushed it out and then kind of have had to work with different governments. So we worked with the Mexican government to kind of build a facility to release sterile flies to push it out of Mexico. And then it was 2001 or 2002 that we worked with the Panamanian government to essentially our one sterile fly production facility is down in Panama. And all of the flies are essentially going there to be released to kind of control it from moving northward, essentially. And so
a normal maggot, people associate maggots with eating on dead stuff.
Correct. Yeah.
But this is a maggot that'll eat on living.
Yeah.
Now, but why does a normal maggot? I'm sure there's many kinds. But,
yeah.
No, I recently heard it called disco rice. Why does a normal maggot want? Why does he want dead stuff?
Yeah. So this is one thing that I tell my students or anybody. Why questions are hard, right? Because it goes down to there's a why, and I can tell you, I don't necessarily know if we completely know why one maggot is going to be specialized for dead tissue. And a lot of it does have to do with, if you're thinking about a normal maggot that you would see, they're not actually feeding on the tissue. They're feeding on the bacteria and they're feeding on kind of all the gross decomposing material that's there. And so that's what they're actually using. So like I did my PhD working on houseflies, and we would kind of create this, what we called larval media. It was essentially how we made new houseflies. And really it's just a combination of, like bran and alfalfa and yeast, and kind of, it smells good until you put flies in it. But all we're doing is creating a bacteria and yeast soup, essentially, so that the maggots can feed on that. And so that, I don't know if we actually know like what exactly it is, but
so they're after whatever else is going on, like what I keep calling them normal maggots.
Yeah,
they're after whatever's going on from the decomposition process,
Correct.
Not necessarily digesting rotten protein.
Correct. Yeah. And they're doing a combination of all of that. But yeah, what differentiates them is kind of, it really has to do just with that one's feeding on living tissue. It's a fascinating thing that there's actually a therapy. It's called medical maggot therapy. There's a guy, Ron Sherman, who was the first person to get maggots FDA approved to put them into wounds to actually clean out wounds. So he developed these.
What kind of maggot's that?
So that's it's Lucilius auricata. It's just like a common green blowfly that you would see. And they found that, again, they're not feeding on living tissue. And there's been some different studies that have shown that the maggots are just as good as a doctor at, or better, at cleaning up the edges of decomposing wounds.
Doesn't say much for you guys.
Maggots are just as good as a doctor.
Well,
it's like lyrics coming out of this guy over here.
Well, it's one of those things. Like I'm a PhD, not an MD, so I'm just throwing shade at them. So it's okay.
No, I got you.
Yeah.
I don't want to stay too long on the normal kind of maggots, but the more commonly available maggots in your local ditch, but in your local summertime ditch, is the peculiar, like, as much of the stench you just said, like, you could make a maggot medium. What was in the maggot medium you make?
Yeah, so for houseflies, which isn't going to be blowflies, that's a whole other thing, and we can talk about that. The housefly stuff is bran, alfalfa, yeast, dry milk.
You say it smells okay.
Yeah, it smells like you're baking until you put flies in it, and then
why do the when you look at a rotten thing laying there, in your mind it's like what you're smelling is the rot.
Yeah.
Right? But you put maggots on it, it creates its own stench.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I don't know if your traditional or run-of-the-mill blowfly maggots are producing this like terrible odor.
Okay.
That is one thing though about primary screwworm, that there is a specific odor that comes off of the larvae that attracts more flies to that wound so that they will lay more eggs. But I can't actually speak to what exactly that is. I think some of it, if you're thinking about it, is they're churning up all of those like volatile things, right? So if you just had something,
in your case of the thing that smells like baking until you put the maggots on it. So what are they doing that's making it stink?
Yeah, so some of that just has to do with the ladder process that we're dealing with it. And so pretty much the entire time that the maggots are in their little container, they're fine. What we do is we take advantage of their biology. So when they're getting ready to pupate or kind of form that chrysalis like a butterfly would, they look for a dark, dry place to kind of hide out. And so what we do is we say, hey,
like the cracks in Giannis's old doghouse.
Exactly. Yeah. Is we say, hey, we want to take advantage of this, so we dump water on them, and we essentially force them out of their container into a secondary container that then we can just collect them all up and essentially cleanly pick them up. So really, what the odor is a combination of the maggots. Now we have rotting material that had maggots in it. Some of the maggots have died and started decomposing. Up until that point, you end up not having a super terrible odor. I will also say though that like I'm pretty nose blind at this point. I've been working with flies for over a decade, and anytime that I've had people come in, they're like, "Oh no, this is terrible," and I'm like, "There's very particular smells that I'm bothered by, but fly maggots is not necessarily one of them." So
no, I could probably go toe to toe with you on nose blindness. We were texting yesterday. There's this machine we're going to talk about. The Nasal Raider. You ever hear of this?
No.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
There's a way. There's a machine. I'm not kidding you. We're gonna talk all about it coming up. if you get, let's say you're a municipal
Nasal ranger.
nasal
Okay.
ranger. Let's say you get a stench complaint. This is the craziest thing. There's a thing
hilarious.
called the nasal ranger. You can go buy it. Someone calls and says, "Man, my neighbors, whatever they got going on, right?
Yeah.
Stinks. Hog farming, beetle works, cleaning skulls, whatever. You
Yeah.
got a complaint. Sewage."
Mhm.
But it's sort of like it's like a little bit subjective.
Yeah.
Like I could go over there and be like, "I don't see what the problem is." My wife would go over there and be like, "Good Lord, that's a problem," right?
Yeah.
So the nasal ranger, it's a machine you put over your nose, and there's a little meter that meters that you're breathing fairly.
Okay.
You can't breathe too little, you can't breathe too much. So it's like you gotta breathe, sucking on that sucker in a way that is like holding the needle in the right spot. So you're breathing like a normal person.
It's the opposite of a breathalyzer.
And it's
True scientific
breathalyzer.
instrument.
Yeah, breathalyzer is like blow, and you're like, my buddy,
like a guy who's experienced that.
Listen, this is so old. I can tell it without. I hope I don't get him in trouble. I'm not gonna say who it is. Did I already say who it is?
Mhm.
No,
I have a buddy.
buddy.
I have
Oh,
a buddy
No, you didn't.
who claimed in the old days, long ago, he had claimed to developed a breathalyzer evading breath technique. He felt that he was able to secretly channel fresh air up through his nose, feed the breathalyzer without drawing into his inner self. Do you follow me?
Guy went to some dead shows.
Without
Huh?
drawing into his inner
Without
self.
letting the air come in and find out what all's going on inside of him.
Did he have like a separate diaphragm and lung cavity?
It was a breathing technique. I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Okay.
I'm not gonna name the guy.
Why would that get him in trouble?
No, if he were to get breathalyzed
Oh yeah.
by a law enforcement officer, he was saying, "You can't catch me because I have a way. I have a way that they don't know I'm doing it, but I'm funneling in gusts of fresh air into my nose, straight out my mouth.
Yeah.
It's like
And
those
it's not
those
coming down into
didgeridoo
my
players that
lungs.
do the circular breathing, you know.
Yeah.
Circular breathing.
Yeah.
The nasal ranger, it then puts a number to the stench.
Okay. How does it do that?
I haven't finished the video yet.
Okay.
Based on your breathing. Based on your particular breathing.
No. It's like there's a whole video where she's demonstrating how it works. You go to the stinky area.
Mhm.
She says, you can go I'm staying 5 feet from the hog farm because the neighbor's fence goes up to the hog farm. So I can stand in the neighbor, I can stay in the yard, put my nasal ranger on, and the meter makes sure you're breathing at a normal, like what would be a normal person's breathing? Meaning you can't go, because that's not normal, right? And you can't go like this. For you people just listening, I'm plugging my nose
Yeah.
because that's not normal. So the nasal ranger makes you do a normal breath.
It seems like it's a little superhero or something. The
Nasal ranger.
You do a normal breath, and it's got these carbon filters on it and whatnot, and it spits out a stench rank.
Yeah. Interesting.
It's fascinating.
Yeah. Well, you were talking about forensic entomology before, and traditionally we do think about it from this, telling when, we call it kind of the period of insect activity, not when they died. But it's most of the forensic cases that people are working on aren't body cases. They're working on cases of lawsuits, and so they're hired by a legal team of someone. My PhD advisor over the years had worked on a poultry farm is being sued by a group of homeowners, and they're saying poultry farm's producing flies and smell.
Okay.
And so he's kind of an expert witness and goes out there, does trapping and does all of this stuff. And so we think about it from that case as, that's really what people that do forensic entomology will do. A lot of those cases are stored product pest things, or,
Got it.
a home that is infested with termites for, let's say, and, there was a negligent home inspector that didn't actually look to see. And so they'll bring in someone and say, oh no, this termite infestation's been here for 10 years. So
Got
they did that. Then there are the people that are testifying in court on saying like, yes, we collected these maggots and we can tell that they were 2 days old or whatever. And so that means that the body was put here on, June 14th or whatever.
Yeah.
But
Years ago, I was renting a house, and there was a basement I wasn't supposed to utilize, but we would utilize it.
Mhm.
And so I was down there all the time, and I knew what was down there. Down there is all kinds of cockroach killer boxes. One day I call them, and I said, man, there's a bad cockroach problem in our house. Oh, we've never seen that. And I couldn't be like, come on. I've been in the basement. I had to just take it.
yeah.
So we got the maggots eat on dead stuff. The screwworm.
Mm-hmm.
Hit me with the life cycle of how a screwworm works. Like I'm assuming he's got to have an entry point like a wound.
Yeah. And so, so the female screwworm fly, the one that's going to lay the eggs, they're looking for a wound or an orifice of some kind. So,
Okay.
you can think mouth, nose,
Oh,
anus, vulva. Those are kind of the places that we're traditionally seeing them in cattle, at least.
okay.
And so they're looking for those, and so they will lay in those locations. But the bigger concern is a wound, and that wound could be anything from an animal that you run it through a chute and it gets cut, or it could be an antler that's fallen off, and so you have this open kind of spot, or
Oh, really?
yeah, so anything like that. So
that's
any of
interesting.
these locations that could be open, the literature says kind of even something like a tick bite location is enough. And so they're attracted to these open wounds. Female comes in, dumps a bunch of eggs. She'll lay
On that little wound.
on that little wound. Those eggs hatch in 12 to 24 hours. They start then those maggots, essentially, they're super, super small. You can't actually see them, or you can, but most people, if they were looking at an animal, wouldn't be able to see it. They start
really?
burrowing into the skin.
So not a big old disco rice style.
No. So initially they're like, I could see them, but when we're talking to people, we generally say that they probably would go undetected for 2 to 3 days.
Huh.
And so
Really?
yeah, and so they're pretty
So
small.
you would just look
yeah.
at a distance and just see a festering wound.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so that's the whole thing. And so those maggots will hatch again. For some reason, the larvae start producing this odor that then draws in more flies that will then lay more
Can you
eggs
pick
in
up
that
on
wound.
the odor?
Yeah, so that's actually something that's really interesting. This scientist John Welch, who's kind of dedicated his life for the last 60 or so years doing this, in the mid 90s, he actually trained a dog to detect screwworm kind of infestations. Yeah, and
Really?
so there's like a little bit of work there. It's kind of a fascinating thing. It's kind of like people will use dogs to detect bed bugs and things like that as well.
Yeah, no kidding.
So then those larvae kind of continue to develop. They go through what we call these larval instars or larval stages. So that's like a 5 to 7 day period. And so here, I don't know, this would be bad for the audience, but so those would be, so those would be maggots that are,
Zoom in on this, Phil.
that would be three
Doesn't quite work.
3
that
to
way.
4, 3 to 4 days old. And so,
Phil's got a telescope. He's gonna
yeah.
zoom in on it.
And again, so those would
So
be,
these are significant. Like it'd be the biggest one in here, just for people that are not watching but listening. The biggest one in here would be barely suitable as ice fishing bait.
yeah. And so those are probably 3 to 4 days old. And so they'll kind of be in this wound for 5 to 7 days. During that time, again, they're attracting more and more adults that are laying eggs. And so you
Okay.
can get all these different life stages. At that point, they say, hey, we're ready to kind of become an adult fly. So they crawl out of the wound and into the soil where they
Okay.
then pupate. So again, that chrysalis type of a thing that you'd have with a butterfly.
Yeah.
They hang out in that stage for, 6 to 8 days, and then they emerge kind of as adults.
Got
and
it.
so depending on the temperature, you can kind of, it's a 2 to 3 week kind of total life cycle. But one thing is that with an infested animal, like you can kill an infested animal in 5 to 7 days. And so
it's what is killing? Like if you ran, let's say we take a cow.
Mhm.
A cow gets a nick from barbed wire. Or give me the most common reason you'd see on cattle. What's the most common reason you'd see a cut on a cow?
Barbed wire is a good one.
Okay.
Mhm.
It gets hung up in the barbed wire.
Yep.
Gets a couple cuts on it.
Yep.
The fly finds it.
Yep.
They get on it.
Mhm.
It dies in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It could, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
You do an autopsy.
Mhm.
Someone does an autopsy.
Yep.
They're like what actually killed it?
Yeah. It's kind of like with anything, right? There could be a number of different things. So depending on where you were, where that site was, and they burrow in, you could be eating.
They burrow.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that's part of the reason that the name screwworm exists is one, the larvae have these ridges on them that kind of look like a screw would. The other thing is that they say they screw into the wound. Essentially, they're burrowing their way through the cavity of the animal. And so
I was thinking of them somehow. I was thinking more of them like
no,
like
not on the surface.
Yeah,
no.
like the hide or something.
No, and
so they go.
So they're going straight
they're
in.
diving
Yeah,
in.
and so they could be eating vital organs. They could be doing anything like that. The other thing that we think about,
Like they could get in there and be like eating lung.
yeah. So what happened?
Damn.
So we had an
know.
outbreak of screwworm in the Florida Keys in 2016.
Okay.
It's the last time that we had an outbreak in the U.S.
Oh, so this is not like
So yes and no. It was the first time that we'd had an outbreak. We still don't know where the flies came from. Like it's this whole wild kind of thing.
okay.
Yes.
Cuba.
Yeah. Maybe not. I'm not going to say anything.
That's
But
that's called reckless.
Yes.
That's
Very much
called,
so.
like,
Can we retract
just
that from the record?
reckless. I don't even know what. It's just reckless.
Yeah.
I don't even need a second word on that.
So yes and no. So to answer your question, there are incursions that occur all the time. But the thing is that in 2016, we didn't have this kind of this kind of infantry essentially that was moving forward that's super close to the U.S. This was kind of like it popped up and then we were able to
popped
wipe
up
it
in
out.
What, in cattle?
No, so it popped up in key deer. And so what happened?
Which is threatened? Or?
Yeah, it's a threatened or an endangered species. And so what ended up happening there is that the people, they're essentially like pets down there. And
Yeah.
so they're people kind of just
Can
saw
you
the
hold
animals.
that thought
Yes.
for a minute? So I want people like, if you're listening and you're not familiar with key deer, key deer, not to be mistaken with coos deer.
Correct.
There's this little teeny shitting whitetail that's like
They're cute.
yeah, but he's no more afraid of the water as a muskrat. I mean, they'll swim around. You should go check them out. Like a little teeny deer, but they're like nowadays, in the old days, you would have called them subspecies. I think now you'd call them an ecotype. A whitetail ecotype down in the Keys. There aren't many. You can't hunt them. They get hit by cars. They haven't been hunted in so long. They're very tame, but it's like a species of concern for sure that they'll blink out.
Yep. And so what ended up happening was it kind of went undetected or unreported for a while, and then people started noticing, hey, why is my pet deer stumbling around?
Okay.
And what they ended up realizing was when they checked out the first couple animals was that screwworm had essentially laid eggs near the antlers and had burrowed their way through the skull of the animals and were eating the brains of the key deer.
On his pedicle, the antler base.
Mhm. Yeah.
You're kidding.
Yeah, I have some wild photos that are just kind of
Here, send them to Phil.
okay.
So
Phil wants to see them.
you were talking about, let's say a cow got stuck in some barbed wire and she got a cut on her leg. And so that's a long ways from the brain as opposed to a deer getting it in the antler and it's going right into the brain. How long does that take to, what's that process?
Yeah. So some of it is you potentially wouldn't have, complete migration in that location. What would be the best way for me to send the?
Oh, sorry.
If you're on a thread with Corinne, you can send them to her and then she can forward them on to me.
Okay. Can I just give because I'm not connected to the internet or anything here.
Okay.
Yeah. Can I just give you my computer and you can just send this PowerPoint over?
Oh yeah, man. Let's get some photos going.
So
You know what we're thinking about doing?
Mhm.
You got some good photos.
yeah.
So we do this calendar series.
Mhm.
We did like effed up deer stands.
Yeah. Have one in my house.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Great. I'm getting out of the calendar business,
Mhm.
but we might do one last calendar called Effed Up Wildlife Diseases.
Yeah.
And it's just every month it's
Mhm.
a picture of a terrible wildlife disease.
Yeah.
And that's going to kind of close out the
Mhm.
series because no one will buy it.
I don't know. You're going to have a bunch of entomologists that want to buy it.
The problem is with the series is every year, like people buy them a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit less all the time
Okay.
because calendars are fading out.
hmm
But to have a calendar that was so disgusting, you follow me?
Yeah.
So disgusting that no one bought it.
Yeah.
It would just end the calendar.
Maybe, or it becomes really, really popular.
No, it's going to end it.
Yeah.
Effed up wildlife diseases.
Yeah.
We'll put
Crazy.
January, it can be screwworm.
Yeah. Yeah. It could be. It could be screwworm. You know, it
You
could be
could do
blue
a
tongue. It could be
You could do a
EHTV.
whole calendar off like one slide
Yeah.
that I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Just the calendar was called One Effed Up Wildlife Disease.
Yeah.
Holy
For-
shit.
Yeah.
Oh.
But
Do we
Ah.
want to put this in the video version,
Oh,
Corinne,
yeah.
or are we gonna? Okay.
100%.
It's going to get some kind of warning.
Yeah,
on it.
YouTube's
While we're
not gonna
distracted
push
by
it,
this,
and then Reva's gonna
there's
get
a question I
mad.
wanted to ask you
Yeah.
earlier that can we back up to? We got you so whacked out now by these.
No,
we'll
it's
get the
okay.
pictures drawn. But there's a question I wanted to ask
Yeah.
you earlier. What can you explain real quick? We have a thing we like what are the you know, like a meat bee? We call them a meat bee.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like let's say you're cleaning fresh
Yeah.
fresh fish. Okay. Or you're eating a burger
Mhm.
out in your
Yeah.
yard. The bee that comes to that,
Mhm.
his motivation is nothing like a fly, right?
yes and no. You know, they're looking for a protein source. So depending on what it is. So there are things. There's a bunch of different species that could be wasps that will feed on meat. There are things called vulture bees actually
Yeah.
that will feed on decomposing material and stuff like that. I had a colleague in California that did some work on them. So again, they're looking for a food source. So it's going to be a similar thing.
But he's not looking to lay his like
No,
if a
no.
fly comes
Yeah.
to a fresh fish,
Mhm.
he's never looking he's not looking to eat the fish.
Depending. It
Okay.
depends on the fly. And so obviously you're going to have some organisms that are going to, you know, your blowflies are going to be looking for a place to lay their eggs.
Yep.
But then some of your standard, run of the mill, your housefly or something like that, it might be coming there to lay eggs, or it could just be coming there to feed as well.
Okay, so he might eat
Correct.
fresh fish.
yeah.
And then he might later come back and be like, no, I'm
Mhm.
gonna lay my eggs on
Yep,
it now
correct.
that it's rotten.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And so again, it's going to be that's the one problem with anything is that there's nuance in all of these. And so you are going to have some stuff with any of these blowflies or a lot of the blowflies that are coming in to look for a place to lay their eggs.
Mhm.
And you will see that. We've done some forensic work where we're putting a dead pig out in the environment and then collecting maggots and stuff like that for our forensic entomology class. And you'll see blowflies that are showing up within 2 minutes of us unloading it from a truck.
Okay.
And then those guys are looking for a place to lay eggs. They're attracted to the smell of death, the decomposition, everything like that.
Yeah.
But once the body cavity and everything like that opens up, you're going to get egg lay, but you also are just going to get them feeding on secretions and everything like that exists there as well. So
How many species of fly in the US?
Mhm.
I don't know how you guys would divide it up. Like I know that you have like Diptera, so you
Mhm.
have
Yep.
little midges and
Yep.
no-see-ums
Mhm.
and but how many species of fly are out there, like clearly visible flies?
Oh, I don't know if I could tell you a number. I
It's
would
like
say
that many.
Yeah. And again, the diversity of them, it goes from everything to a mosquito, which you could see, to your horseflies, right? Like so, and then you have no-see-ums, your chelicoides or your leptoconops, these biting midges that are transmitting pathogens and things like that.
Got
And so,
it.
yeah,
It's just like dozens and dozens.
yeah, or thousands probably.
Thousands.
Yeah,
No kidding.
yeah, and
Okay.
so and again in the U.S., I couldn't tell you exactly. I'm not someone that does fly systematics of kind of understanding all the relatedness, but yeah, there's a ton of them. that are-
Perhaps thousands of flies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So when we got y'all screwed up with trying to get the pictures, you were laying out talking about the
Mhm.
key deer.
Yeah.
Is it fucking keys or key?
I think it's key.
I think it's key deer.
Key deer.
Yeah.
you were laying that out, and we're talking about the getting into the brain.
Yeah.
And Doug was bringing up, let's say a cow gets a cut on its hip,
leg, or something.
its hip. No, so there's no like, he's not in the lungs, he's not in the brain.
Yeah. And so again, in those types of situations, it's just going to be invading that tissue there. It's not going to migrate and move. It's not like it's targeting the brain or something like that. It's just looking for an open wound. So wherever that open wound is, and then that is essentially then at that point going to be expanding out. So you're just going to have this cavity that is forming. And a lot of times what ends up happening is that if it's not something where it's like complete consumption, it's actually a secondary bacterial infection that ends up being the problem. And so, just think of
so it could wind up with a fever.
Exactly. And again, like what you'll see clinically in animals is kind of, a lot of those standard like failure to thrive symptoms that you would see, drooping head, animals that are isolating, kind of a lot of these things, a very specific odor that's coming out of it. And then wounds that essentially, might even look small on the surface, but it's a deep cavity that's going inwards. And again, all of that is just opening up for secondary bacterial infection. So
do they like horn flies, face flies, stuff that I've dealt with cattle? Are they also attracted to like eyes and nose, and that they're around the head all the time?
Yeah. So horn flies, not as much. Sometimes you will see them in and around the head. I guess that's where with horn flies. But generally, you're seeing horn flies like on the back of the animal and everything's like that. So yeah, these guys they will be because they're going to be attracted to the nose and the mouth and things like that. But it's really they're looking for those kind of open wounds.
But those are wounds. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit different. I meant face flies.
Okay.
Horn flies. Yeah. But so that's different. Okay. The other thing that, and I asked you about this before, being it's a weird question, but I was a Catholic boy, and when
you sure you want to talk about this here, Doug?
Let's talk about this quickly. And I remember the nuns saying there was a purpose for everything, right? Like,
okay. I thought never mind.
so the purpose of, and you can, and I've thought about that. I mean, there's a lot of things that didn't make sense to me then, but that always made sense to me. Like, there's a purpose for everything, right?
Sure.
Mosquitoes have a purpose, flies have a purpose. Maggots, decomposition, all of those sort of things.
This is a very human-centric perspective.
Right, but what's the purpose? I mean, isn't it like an evolution? Isn't there? What's the purpose of this?
Yeah, so that's the thing it's funny, and you posed this before, and it's kind of most of the time if you ask an entomologist or you ask someone, it's like, should we just get rid of all the mosquitoes? They'll talk about ecosystem services, bats, and whatever else it's eating them, right?
Like, what would be the cost of getting rid of mosquitoes?
Exactly, yeah. And someone you can steel man an argument. Kind of, again, this USDA researcher, John Welch, who has worked on this, he's like, my goal is to get rid of them. He's like, I don't see any purpose for them.
He wants to play God.
Yeah, very much so. But he's worked his entire career. I remember seeing him talk after the key deer kind of thing in the Florida Keys, and he was at a conference, and he broke down crying at how like horrible it was just seeing these animals that they're collecting up animals that are staggering around that they're having to euthanize. And again, he's like my goal is if I could, I would get rid of them. So
history has not been kind to that sentiment.
Correct. Yeah.
But I want to talk. So the key deer deal. We didn't finish the story.
Yeah.
There's not right now a whole bunch of key deer getting killed by screwworms.
Correct. Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah. So back in the 1930s.
No, we're just in 2016.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
But what essentially happened, and this goes back to the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, how we eradicated it originally, is that these two USDA scientists came up with this idea called sterile insect technique.
Okay.
And pretty much it takes advantage of the screwworm's biology. So what they figured out was that female flies only mate once. And so if you can produce a bunch of male flies and you can throw them out in the environment, they'll meet up with a female, mate with her, And since she only mates once and she got the signal that she mated, she's not ever going to produce viable offspring. And so what they essentially did in 2016 is they went in and they did a bunch of sterile releases of flies, and they knocked the population out, and they completely eradicated screwworm from the Florida Keys using this sterile insect
How are they
technique.
sterilizing them?
Cobalt, and it's essentially a radioactive cobalt that they're using, and they're irradiating flies. And some of it is like a process that I was, we were kind of going through this thing. But yeah, so they're producing down in Panama currently about 110 million flies a week.
What?
Yeah.
Radiating them.
Yeah. And so they're irradiating them to the, and again, they're using a radioactive isotope. And people are
And
currently
you zap them just enough to kind of
Correct.
kill his nuts.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's what they're doing. And again, these two scientists first were playing around trying to figure out like how they could do it, what they were doing. There was some previous work that had shown that you could do this in another fly species. So they were like, hey, can we try it with screwworm? And they were able to figure out, it's kind of like that fine line between sterile flies and non-sterile flies. And over time, they actually they've had mistakes where they didn't sterilize the flies
Got it.
appropriately.
Yeah.
That happened down in Mexico.
They didn't zap them good enough.
Correct. Yeah. And so currently we only have this one sterile fly facility. There was one in Mexico when we were trying to eradicate it that they've now taken offline. That was producing 500 million flies a week. And so,
Good Lord.
yeah. And again, we're just flooding the environment with these flies. To essentially be like, hey, we want to find any female fly, and so they can mate, and then we wipe them out that way. It's a brilliant technique. It's just kind of like over time with everything, right? It's this evolutionary adaptation of, over time we've had our sterile flies that don't compete. And so then they've had to change the strain that they've used. So they've gone and essentially collected new flies, colonized them. It's this whole kind of like fascinating process that they're doing, but that's kind of been the game plan. And so that's what they did back
Go into an area where there's a blow up.
Yep. And
Dump
flood
in
it with
millions of
sterile flies.
Okay, we got what looks to be my dog on the right.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta ask you another. I gotta tell you about something.
Man, I can't.
Yeah.
Well, I want to get into these pictures. We got
Describe to the audience
some
what
heinous
you're
pictures. Well, no, I
seeing.
got a question though.
Oh.
I got not a question, but the other day, you're the perfect audience for this. You guys both are the perfect audience for this. The other day, I'm talking about my buddy Kevin Murphy. He's talking about when he's a kid working on a farm. And I said, what were your responsibilities? He's talking about working on a farm when he's a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about one of the things they would do is he would work on they were experimenting with artificial insemination.
Mm-hmm.
They had a bull. This has nothing to do with worm flies.
Yeah.
If you ever heard this or not. This might be common practice. They had a bull. They rerouted this bull's pecker.
Oh.
You follow me?
Yeah.
So it was going off backward. Rerouted his pecker surgically. Had a vet come in.
Like just flipped around.
Yep, they
Like if
took
it's
out- there's like a-
pointing north,
they took
no,
out like-
pointing
They
south.
took out like the pecker. It's not a baculum, but like the rigid structure. Took it, removed it to the
Wow.
point where a guy was able to keep it.
Why?
Removed it and rerouted it. Then they would hang a giant, imagine a necklace that's like a ballpoint pen hanging on his neck.
Why?
An ink blotter hanging on his neck.
Poor guy.
You turn him out with the cows. He can tell when a cow's in heat.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
He jumps up there, but he's been rerouted. So it doesn't do anybody any good. Does him good, but not the cow any good. But when he jumps up there, he ink blots her with his ink blotter.
Oh.
Then all the kid's got to do is he looks out and, hey, there's another cow with an ink blot on her. She must be ripe.
Hmm.
And then
Run
they're
out.
doing AI.
AI it.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of that?
I had not. I was thinking, well, this must be a new way of gathering
This is the
semen
old
from.
way.
But it makes nothing but sense if you're doing AI. I mean, old way is just let that bull out there.
Yeah,
You know.
that's
That's the old way, Steve.
So neither of you guys ever heard of that?
No.
Yeah, it's
Oh, it's very interesting, man. Very interesting. You can make like a movie about that.
yeah. We would just stand and watch the cows and go, "Oh, she's ready."
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it was a daily thing.
I thought that was really something. Okay, where are we on? So you releasing all these flies?
Yeah.
Millions. Okay, now about the process here of putting the steriles out.
Mhm.
Can you give me an estimate? And maybe you can't.
Mhm.
Like take the key to your situation.
Yeah.
So you're on Big Piney or whatever one of those keys.
Yep.
One of those keys. This is probably impossible to say. Like how many to be effective? Do you need to put so many flies out that the majority of the flies on the landscape are your doctored flies, or will a percent
Mhm.
ultimately do it?
Yeah, so I couldn't tell you what that number is actually going to be. One thing that's actually interesting about them is that the flies exist in kind of a relatively low adult number,
Okay.
like 200 to 300 per square mile,
Oh.
type of a thing.
Really?
And yeah. And so it's one of the, and actually I just learned this when I was in a
Doug's got
workshop.
more deer than that.
Yeah, and so it was something that
Used to.
I recently learned when we were doing a workshop, and so again you're just hammering that environment, and so yeah maybe there is I wouldn't even want to estimate how many adult flies are in that environment, and again let's just dump as many as we can. So like in the
but
Florida,
it could theoretically be that on a property,
Mhm.
on an island,
Yeah.
on a whatever, that there could be just like as low as like some number of hundreds of males.
Yeah.
But you could go there and be like, I'm going to put thousands.
yeah, and
sterols.
that would be the kind of the idea. And
Like
again,
you overwhelm them.
their
Yeah.
proof of concept with any of this, they actually, when they were testing all of this, they did it on the island of Curacao to wipe out the screwworm problems that were there. And so they actually
Where's that? I'm
started.
thinking of the director.
Yeah, it's. I couldn't tell you exactly where it is.
Curacao, it's in the Caribbean.
Okay.
Oh.
And again, they were using this as kind of this. Okay, well, flies aren't moving in, so we can see what we can do,
I got
kind of
it.
in this situation. 'Cause that's
Oh, yeah.
and-
You're not worried about new ones coming
exactly,
across.
yeah,
I
and
got you.
so
Clean it up.
with this situation again, like in the Florida Keys situation, I was just looking. They dumped 188 million flies, and so
Really?
yeah, so over about a 1 month or a couple month period, and yeah, they're just hammering that
And
environment.
they're just gone.
Yeah.
But dudes that are living there have to be walking out. And it's got to be like, seems like there's flies everywhere.
Yeah, that's something that I've asked some people about. Is kind of like, well, if we get screwworm in the U.S., are people going to be okay with this idea? Just because they kind of will do two different things, and it's kind of an interesting situation when we think about public's perception of science in general, right? It's kind of a changed over time. The way that they release these either is with ground release chambers, where essentially they're boxes that are full of these pupae, or they drop them from airplanes. And so they release them out of airplanes, out of the back of airplanes.
Adults.
Yeah, the adults. And then they'll fall to the ground. And
Whole
so
new kind of chemtrail.
yeah,
Dude.
well, and it's just, they do that in California for Mediterranean fruit fly. They're releasing multiple 100 million flies a week in California to control Mediterranean fruit fly. So it's something that is done. It's just not something that a lot of people know about. And also something that's really small versus here's an adult fly. It's your standard kind of blowfly size.
So it's the same technique with the fruit flies.
Yeah, exactly.
It's sterile flies,
Yep.
stable
Stable,
It's
sterile
funny
males.
because I would never,
Sterile
if I
males.
saw that dude hanging around, no, I think I would recognize him as not being a normal one.
So and
Kind of
again,
an electric blue.
yeah, and so those are one thing that's interesting is that they actually will change color depending on what they feed on. So it's kind of a really strange thing. We have in the U.S. though a very closely related fly that looks nearly identical, and so it's kind of a challenge when it comes down to it of differentiating them. You can do it, not that difficult if you look at it underneath the microscope.
Yeah.
But we have this secondary screwworm that is common. It doesn't feed on living flesh. It doesn't do anything like that. And so we end up that's one of the problems that you end up running into is identifying them and putting out traps to try to monitor for them.
Got it.
Is the attractant that the USDA has essentially developed also attracts all the blowflies because it's essentially just a combination of a bunch of chemicals that then mimic rotting flesh, essentially. So
now, when you go in, like, let's say you go into a community, agricultural community.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, y'all got there's a screwworm outbreak.
Mhm.
And we're gonna dump 200 million sterile flies.
Yeah.
How many days is it until all those sterile flies are gone?
Yeah. I couldn't put a number on it. There is specific kind of criteria of when you can call an area eradicated that they do. So for an area to be, free of
how long will those bugs live?
So an adult fly in the environment will live a few weeks.
Okay.
And again, it'll just continually propagate. And so that's part of the reason
But they can't because they're sterile.
Correct. And that's what you are looking for. But there's going to be some individuals that mated with a non-sterile fly. And so that's why you kind of have to do these releases over and over. And while you're doing that, you're monitoring and looking for if the flies you are collecting, if they're sterile or if they're not sterile. And so that's part of the process as well. And so it's kind of a continued release over time. It's not just like, let's just drop all these flies this one time. You want to continue to do it because you're going to, in essence, miss some of them at some points.
Yep. Why is there, and I know that, the press will kind of, they like, I don't mean it's a negative way, but people will look and there's a sensational quality to it. Okay, there's like flesh-eating flies, right? There's a sensational quality to it. People are going to read it. But from talking to you, it seems like it's almost a non-problem if it's so easily remedied. Like, is there a scenario in which you could get, is there a scenario in which you could go haywire to where you're not able to produce enough to catch it?
So that's part of the problem is that, the USDA and kind of researchers in general we've relied on sterile insect technique, and that's been the whole focus of everything like that. But we can't say that it's a non-problem because currently us doing sterile releases isn't controlling the problem.
Where is it not controlling the problem?
In Mexico. So the thing is that if sterile releases were controlling the issue initially, it never would have moved out of Panama. And so it moved out of Panama, and then since 2023, it's been moving its way up through Mexico. And so we're doing sterile releases in Mexico. And the big concern really when it comes down to it, and again, it's not a concern as it is more of an infrastructure problem, is that we have one facility that's producing flies. The Copeg facility in Panama is producing 110 million flies a week. But if it gets into the U.S., we're going to need 500 or 600 million flies a week. And part of the problem is that we now have to, it's like when you build infrastructure for anything, is that we're at this point oh shit, if it gets here, this is a problem, but it's a 2-3 year lag time to build a facility to be able to produce flies, because this isn't hey, let's just bring in these flies. It has to be, you have radiation, all of the security clearance and security kind of protocols and safety that go into, having, nuclear, radioactive elements in an area to irradiate flies is something. And then it's also the idea of, well, we're now bringing flies that aren't sterile into this environment. And one thing as a researcher that's very challenging is that the USDA has essentially said, hey, we're the ones that are doing this. We're working on this problem. And so no one in the US can bring flies to do actual research here in the US because they don't want it getting out.
Okay.
And so the USDA has kind of put this block on that. And I totally understand they want to be able to control the situation. And it's been, hey, we have this thing that works. No one needs to worry about it. But now they're like, okay, let's do something. They just put out a call for, they dedicated $100 million to try to get researchers to apply to try to do something, if it's extension, if it's outreach, if it's actually doing monitoring for things like that.
But the only tool right now, the only known tool to combat it is the sterile.
Correct. And that's part of the concern, is that that's not working, and that's where we put all our eggs in that one basket. And so now it's, what do we do? And the other thing is that back in the day, I had a couple students that I talked to them. They come from beef cattle background in New Mexico, and they're like, oh yeah, my grandparents talked about, during calving season, because that's another place that you'll see it, is in the navel. And so during calving season, they would go out, they described it to me as that purple stuff, whatever it was some, organophosphate or something like that they were applying, and it did great. The problem is that all of those products because we haven't had it be a problem, they've all been taken off of EPA registry. They've been taken off of, FDA registry. So currently we have 2 products that are under emergency use that can be used in animals. And there is nothing else that's developed or licensed to even treat animals with. And so it's kind of this multi-pronged approach. And then from the insecticide side, to try to control them, no one's worked with screwworm. And so on a label, if it doesn't say that you can use it on screwworm, you can't use it on screwworm. And so you have to follow what the label says. So if it says it's for horn flies and face flies and stable flies and house flies, great. But if you end up using it for screwworm, well, you're now breaking the law. And so
why is that? Like, I know that on chemical compounds, when you get a patent on a chemical compound, you're actually patenting the application.
Yeah. And with some of that, yeah.
Okay, so who says you can't use it?
The EPA. So the EPA is the EPA is
not the manufacturer, patent holder.
No, and so but
you're
when
violating federal law.
Correct. When they get that license, it will say on the label, this is used for termites, or this is used for
permitted for use in. I see.
Exactly, and so that's the problem, is that we have lots of products that are probably effective. But again, none of us have been able to do the work. And there's, talking to my USDA colleagues, there's like, there's a whole lot of work that we don't know, like even standard, just like behavior stuff. A lot of my work that I do is insect and animal behavior. And so it's, we don't necessarily know how they move, how they're interacting, because we kind of put all of our eggs in this one basket. And also when we did all this work, we did it all in South America. And so we have a very different climate, in New Mexico. In southern New Mexico, in the tip of Texas, is reservoirs where screwworm would continually develop because it doesn't get cold enough during that period of time. The rest of the U.S., luckily, like here in Montana, if screwworm showed up, it might be an issue during the summer, but it's going to die out in the winter.
It'll kill them.
Yeah, it'll kill them in the winter. But that's the big problem with those southern states, that's those southwestern states. And so there's a lot of these different things that we don't know, that we're kind of like, all right, what do we do now? And so it's kind of rushing to figure out, like, what can we do? What can we not do? And again, we have to follow all of the laws that exist. And so if it's cattle, or if it's, a big concern is that it's if it gets into wildlife, what do you do? It then just runs rampant, right?
Has anybody drawn a line? Well, I'll explain what I'm getting at through a different thing. I had a buddy of mine that worked on a project years ago. They were trying to draw a line at what could possibly be the northward spread of the Burmese python. And it would just be that you would put them in burrows. Yeah. Like make enclosures, put them in burrows, and then see if they crawled out in the spring or not. Yeah. Right? Because that's the thing. It's like, at a point, it's too cold. They can't overwinter. Yeah. What would be the line along the U.S.? Yeah, or have you guys really refined?
Yeah,
that?
No. So that's something that, again, a lot of it is, it's funny, up until maybe, honestly, probably the last year, there wasn't a whole lot of, there was like all the historical old work that was done. It was really hard to find, though. Even from a teaching perspective, if we're trying to talk about screwworm, I'm like trying to pull images and stuff like this, and it's, I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel. And so a lot of this stuff wasn't
like old references to things that may or may not have
exactly.
been. Yeah.
And some of that had to do with, like, the USDA is like, it's down in Panama. Like, we don't, like, the effort that we're going to put in to prepare all of this new material, it isn't a issue for us at this moment. So when it comes to kind of the expansion, like, there were cases that it potentially would get up to Canada. And really, though, you're going to see it kind of this centralized, up through Colorado, Utah.
No kidding.
Yeah, and so you will see it in those locations. Again, our biggest concern now at this point is livestock movement, because obviously we have animals that are moving and they get shipped from let's say New Mexico, and then they get shipped over to Colorado, or they get shipped to Montana, or they who knows?
Yeah.
And then it's, well, we imported a case, and so then it exists in this area, and so it may not stick around, but if you have an impact where I know that back in the 30s there was, in one section of Texas, screwworm killed 188,000 cows in 1 year.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
So,
And
what time frame was that again?
that was in 1933 in 1 year.
33.
Yeah.
Huh.
And so when we first started seeing it, and so
Damn.
yeah, and so it is a big concern, and again, it's that problem of stopping forward progress, and that's where talking about this idea of, is it a concern? It is a concern because at the moment we haven't been able to completely stop forward progress, and so it's part of my whole thing here is to be able to communicate, because it isn't something of, well, hopefully it doesn't ever come to the U.S. and I don't have to deal with it, right? But if it does, we need a whole lot of people to be able to identify, oh, hey, this looks weird. Hey, I can submit a sample to, to confirm that that's what it is, and then we can, the USDA has kind of put out their game plan on what they would do, like quarantining an area, so that you restrict animal movement and things like that for that.
So the
period of time.
animals are going to be more likely. The animals are going to be more likely to move at long distances than the flies flying around.
Correct. Yeah. So the literature says that like these flies can fly 10 to 15 miles.
Okay.
In practice, I will say, it's the one thing that science says and what happens practically. Like there's some studies that show that houseflies will fly 20 kilometers. And it's like one mark recapture study that someone did. It's like, no, they're going to fly 100 yards to your neighbor's farm, And so the movement doesn't exist. And again, like screwworm has relatively narrow tolerances for temperature. One thing that's interesting about them is they won't fly over bodies of water.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they'll fly along it. So like a riparian area. But if like the reason that we had, we stopped the movement eastwards at different points.
Keys?
Again,
I got to tell you about this will be interesting too.
Yeah.
And it's kind of applicable. Man, like in sort of the immediate post 9/11 era, I was working on a magazine piece where I was at I was at like a convention. I don't know what they call it, a stock detective convention that dealt in livestock theft, but it had this whole biosecurity element to it.
Yeah.
They had found in Afghanistan, when they're doing all their raids on Al-Qaeda areas, they had found where they were like swapping information about livestock diseases. Okay? Like they were at least exploring the idea of a biohazard livestock thing. So this guy was there and he presented, and I sat in on the presentation, and they ran models of, say, a person went to a stockyard, and I can't remember where the stockyard was. I mean, it was somewhere in the central U.S., like Kansas or whatever.
Yeah.
They're like, say a terrorist went to a stockyard, and they ran a scenario where he swabbed the nose. He swabs a half dozen cows at a stockyard with an anthrax form, and they ran a model about its explosion, and it was like alarming.
Yeah.
Right? Like movement of animals, it kind of makes me think of this, where with the thing in the keys, like, do you ever have, I don't want to give anybody any ideas out there.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know how many Al-Qaeda dudes listen to the show, but like, has anybody ever brought this up, that it could just be like a economic weapon?
Well, yeah, and that's something that we see with, it's a concern with any of these either invasive species that we think of, it's bioterrorism at that point. And it's thinking about the movement of if it's screwworm, if it's a big thing is cattle fever tick, which is a huge deal. And so, like, if you were to move those into the U.S., that's going to, or even bringing in, a thing that I think is kind of relevant is, with blue tongue virus, which is transmitted by these biting midges, when we have outbreaks, currently there's some weird dynamics of blue tongue going on in Europe. Like, you end up halting trade because of those things, and the economic damage and kind of, the downstream consequences that exist are present. And so it is something that is thought about what that really looks like. I don't know. It's I'm not sitting in on those meetings of people strategizing, people bringing
is it even
in.
plausible or not?
I think it would be plausible, right? I think that if you were to do that, it would just be a matter of, with something like that, you'd have to start a colony and you'd have to do all this stuff to then get them to then bring them to the U.S. and what that would look like.
Take some level of expertise.
Yeah, exactly.
A while back, that was a few months ago maybe, the Trump administration floated the idea that, like, they're trying to, they like attacked egg prices, right? The Trump administration was like trying to like lower beef prices, and there was this conversation of, and I don't even know that Doug might know how this works, but there's this conversation of, well, let's bring more beef from Argentina, let's bring more beef from Mexico.
Yeah.
This has the plan and all that, right? I mean, like, you show up with a truckload, like you show up at the Douglas, Arizona crossing.
Yep.
And I don't know how it works, but
So,
like presumably you show up with a truckload of cows. Our guys, customs or whatever the veterinarian aspect of customs in, that's got to be a real question, right?
So,
like, where'd they come from? And
so all the animal ports of entry are currently closed due to screwworm with Mexico.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Oh.
So
that was kind of a non-idea. I guess you could bring packaged meat in.
So you could do something like that. And one thing, again, I'm new to New Mexico, but one thing that is interesting, I guess for everybody, is that New Mexico has the largest animal port of entry anywhere in the U.S. So we import more than 50% of the cattle that come across from Mexico at the Santa Teresa border crossing near El Paso.
And it's closed because of screwworm.
So all of the border crossings are. So Douglas, Columbus, any of them in Texas. We currently are not importing animals from Mexico because of screwworm. So what that looks like in different ways, I don't know. I'm not an economist, so I can't speak to some of that. But what they're currently closed, and so and when they do reopen,
whose call is that to make? USDA?
It's APHIS's call, and I think that there are going to be some downstream consequences. I have a colleague who works with he works in cattle, and he was talking about just the drivers that would be bringing those animals across to then truck them. The border's been closed for multiple months, and it's like they had to go find new jobs because that was their job.
Sure.
So what's going to happen when the ports open back up? Are they just going to, they all have new jobs. It was kind of like when,
I got you.
When the government fired all these USDA employees, it's like, oh, hey, we actually needed those people. But like they can't just sit there. So they went and found new jobs.
Did they doge a bunch of screwworm guys?
So not, I think they tried with a lot of these things. They were like, oh yeah, you've been here for, because it was all these temporary employees. So if it was screwworm or it was high path avian influenza, they were like, oh yeah, we need to fire all these people. And they're like, oh no, we need those people. And so they fired them and then took away their government emails and then brought them back. And I'm very good friends with the people that run the screwworm lab. And it's been a lot of just USDA people.
I got a handful of buddies that they're like, oh shit, we fired him?
Yeah.
Call him back.
Yeah. Well, and
he can come back.
And that's kind of the whole thing, right? And so there's a lot of these infrastructure pieces that we don't know what it's going to look like. And there's a lot of people that want that border to open. But there's going to be policies. So currently the process will be, the animals are already dipped with coumaphos when they come across the border anyways, to deal with cattle fever tick or other ectoparasites. But they're going to be treating them with ivermectin and moving them across the border when that ends up opening.
The COVID medication? That was a joke.
Yeah, haha. For us, it's one of these things that it's been something that has been used for so long in both human and animal production systems. And so But there are going to be all of these different things that go on. But yeah, currently the borders are shut down because of that. So what that looks like moving forward, I know that there's like rumblings that people want it to open, but it also doesn't seem like we're anywhere near that actually being the case.
Let's jump to an area. Let's jump into an area where there's like high rates.
Mhm.
Okay, like a real trouble spot.
Yeah.
We keep talking about it with cattle,
Mhm.
but it's like in an area that has screwworm. It's somewhat indiscriminate, right?
Correct.
Like I mean, like
Yeah.
there's not like a deer strain
No.
and a cow strain. It's like all things get hit.
Yeah, and I've focused mostly on cattle here. Just
Pull that picture back because I thought I saw a dog.
Yeah, correct. And so
okay.
in Mexico currently, the if you look at the distribution of and that middle one's a video too. If you click on it,
I can't.
you can't. Okay,
Sorry.
no, it's all
Please
good. Yeah. So in Mexico, the number one infestation is in cattle.
Okay.
Number two is in dogs. And part of that though,
Is that his brain pan opened up?
yeah. Yeah, and so and then that
They got through the bone?
yeah, so they're just chewing through everything.
They can chew through your bones.
I don't know exactly how that all looks, to be completely honest, but yeah, it's not great. And so again, so it's indiscriminate. And
That looks a lot like my dog's
I
head.
talk a lot about cattle, but that's because that's the thing that we look at, right? Like
Oh, yeah.
we're looking at animals, we're running them through a chute, we're doing all of that.
That deer's like alive.
Yeah,
Just-
so that's a key deer that has its brain essentially eaten.
So it's alive with like a hole in its skull
Correct.
and its brain exposed.
Yeah,
That
non-typical,
is
too.
the beautiful
So,
part.
but they didn't get in on him. They didn't get in on him because he dropped his antlers.
No. So that's just a
He's got
scratch or a
scratch
wound.
on his head.
Yeah, and so again, it's one of these things that my concern, and again, like wanting to
That is
communicate
brutal.
to a group of outdoors people, is that we're not looking at animals. We're not looking at wildlife.
Yeah.
Because we're not rounding up deer and running them through a chute to inspect them, right?
Yeah, for
and
sure.
so
Yeah, you don't take a drive. No one's taking a drive every morning and you see how the herd's
exactly.
doing.
And so the problem is that, yeah, it's going to get into wildlife and it's going to run rampant in wildlife because wildlife are going to get to places people can't get to.
Sure.
And then it's going to exist and you're going to have animals that die and then those maggots are going to crawl off, pupate, emerge as adults, and they're going to infect some other animals. And it's going to be this, propagating issue.
Yeah,
that-
actually, like it could live in a deer herd.
Correct.
It could live in a
Yeah.
deer herd somewhere for
Mhm.
some period of time before a stockman realizes.
Correct. Yeah, and so that's kind of the concern. And so in Mexico, talking to these veterinarians that we brought up for this training, they were saying, like, we asked about wildlife. They're like, oh yeah, 100% is in wildlife. We can't document those cases.
Mhm.
And so because of that, it's this kind of this area that kind of exists that we don't really know what to do with. And even when it comes to outreach and stuff like that, we can go to a cattlemen's association meeting, we can talk to brand inspectors, we can do a lot of that type of stuff. But when it comes to communicating to a bunch of hunters or outdoors people in general, it's a more challenging kind of environment to be able to communicate to them, to develop different tools to be able to do that. A couple colleagues of mine were putting together a survey for New Mexico where we went to survey hunters, kind of outdoors people, cattle producers, and the general public. I recognize that there's a certain type of person that answers surveys, but it is still one of these things that we want to be able
That'd
to
be
do
a good
that.
survey. Do you
Yeah.
answer surveys?
Yeah, it could be. That could be the first question. But it is
Everyone that I get.
yeah, but it is something.
100% people.
Yeah, yeah. It's something that in the next couple of weeks that's something that we're gonna put out to try to just see what people know, what people don't know.
Yeah, tell people what to look for. Like you're
Yeah.
out in the woods, you're out running around, whatever.
Yeah.
And then here you see a blank.
Yeah. So some of that is going to be challenging, right? Because if you see a dead animal and you see maggots, you'll see that, right? Like that's just going to happen with a decomposing animal.
Sure, yeah.
And so some of it is just a matter of, if you see that, that's something that you should be reporting.
A dead animal with maggots.
A dead animal with maggots.
So you saw us just this morning report a dead owl in a tree.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but again, it's one of these things that it will be especially important if and when screwworm gets here, but it is going to be kind of a early reporting thing as well. So depending on the state that you're in, in New Mexico, at all of our extension offices, I know Arizona's doing a similar thing. We have these collection kits that people can request or get, and pretty much what it comes with is a set of tweezers.
Got it.
It comes with a vial that has 70% ethanol in it.
Okay.
And then it comes with a QR code. And it pretty much says collect maggots from these different locations. And then essentially you can then submit it to the New Mexico Department of Ag.
Not just from live stuff.
No, from dead things as well. I think that it's one of these things that we're looking more for a living animal that has things in it. But for hunters, you know,
because you're not going to get that.
Yeah,
from
you
deer.
just harvest a deer, and you immediately look it over. I mean,
exactly.
everybody.
Well, and that's really where, you know, I'm trying to communicate is, you're going to be looking at animals in a way that the rest of us aren't, right?
Yeah.
And again, we're especially in southern New Mexico, where, you know, we have a number of those exotics and everything like that. It's going to be something that people are handling those animals because they've harvested them to look them over, look for maggots, anything like that. And so obviously if you were to come across an animal and it's just skull and bones in the, you know, am I saying that you should collect maggots? Probably not, but it also wouldn't hurt. You know, part of the New Mexico Department of Ag and, you know, ag agencies in general across the country, part of what they're doing right now is processing samples. If it's adult flies, if it's maggots.
Just to monitor.
Yeah, just to monitor.
Are you seeing the wildlife agencies take interest yet, or is it mostly the ag community?
So it's mostly the ag community. So in New Mexico, we Fish and Wildlife put out kind of a call. It was an email to anyone that drew a tag last year, essentially saying, hey, be on the lookout for this. I don't know of any other agencies that are currently doing that, though. I think that it is a really great thing to kind of be able to do that. So like I got an email, a colleague of mine got an email, and I was like, oh, okay, actually they're doing something. But that's part of the challenge, is because it is this whole other group that we don't traditionally interface with. And so it's getting those people involved. And the other challenge is that, you know, every state has their own state response. Obviously, it's all governed by the USDA, but what Texas is doing and what New Mexico is doing and what Arizona is doing, what California is doing, they're all slightly different. And a lot of that has to do with kind of funding structures and where stuff like that is coming from. And so, and the way that people are developing things. And so, again, my kind of call is if you see something, say something in a lot of ways, because I think that it's something that is going to be a concern. And if you're concerned about the environment, you're concerned about the health of wildlife, you know, that's a big concern on that front.
You know, we have a lot of conversations about mortality events with wildlife. Yeah. And there's this question of like, is it a population level impact? Meaning someone might look and say lead ammunition can lead to some raptor death because they're ingesting fragments of lead from carcasses they scavenge that are left by hunters. And someone might counter that by saying, that happens, it's not a population level impact. Or wind turbines, you know, on certain bird species. You might be like, yes, for sure, but it's not a population level impact. The same way you'd look and you'd say here, like, man, cars hit and kill a lot of deer, right? Most every week, you see a new dead deer somewhere around these neighborhoods that we're in right now. But it's not a population level impact. In your opinion, is it possible to have population level impacts on wildlife, considering that this stuff needs to be wounded? Yeah.
I couldn't say, like, truly. I think some of it, you know, what that really looks like. I think if it were to just run rampant, you potentially would see that. You know, I'm thinking about, you know, like oryx in New Mexico or something like that. I could see a population level impact there, right? Are you going to see that in an area
where you
where
have a thing that's confined to a relatively small area anyways, and it's not a huge population anyways?
Or, you know, or we're talking pronghorn populations in New Mexico or anything like that, right?
That's a good point. In a reduced vulnerable population, a population level impact could be 4 adults.
Correct. And so that's where I think you're going to see impacts. Do I think that there's going to be a population level impact to whitetail deer? No, probably
Okay,
not.
Yeah. But like it's additive mortality.
Correct.
And for some populations, like the key deer,
Yeah.
losing a handful of mature animals is a hit.
Yeah, and so I think they lost 150 deer or something like that, which is a huge number with what the population is.
Yeah, I got it.
And
I see what
so
you're saying.
I can't speak to that from that, and I also don't know if anyone has ever tried modeling it or anything like that. We say that it'll have an impact on wildlife, but that's the challenge, is that how do you actually, it hasn't been here for being endemic for 50 plus years. And so what that looks like, how they were modeling, how they were doing any of that, it's completely changed. And so, yeah, I don't know. I can't definitively say, but some of these more vulnerable populations, I could imagine it being a concern. And then that's going to change, tag allocation and anything else like that. And so it's going to be a kind of concern overall.
We mentioned getting on dogs in Mexico on dogs. Is that mostly are they seeing it on, that's just like feral dogs, street dogs?
Yeah. So
not so much pets.
No, so you'll see it in pets as well.
You might have your dog come home and be like, what in the world?
Correct. And so that's actually something that currently, whenever an animal is brought from a endemic zone in Mexico, across the border, the animals are supposed to have a certified vet inspection.
And that's one of the things they would look for.
And that's that's the reason that it currently exists for companion animals, is so that because screwworm coming across, and that, some people are very concerned about that's how screwworm would get here, is because we already have
my buddy. I don't want to rat him out, and the dog's dead anyway because it was so long ago. He smuggled a Mexico dog home. Named it number 7, and died long ago.
Okay.
But you wouldn't be able to waterboard it out of me who did it though.
Okay.
What about wild hogs? 'Cause
Yeah,
I know
so-
in Texas
correct.
there's a huge fear around
So
around screwworms.
yeah. So that's it. That's
Screwworms like hogs.
And
correct.
wild hog hosts.
Well, just think about
the numbers.
them, interacting, wounding themselves or others, and then kind of what that's going to do, and then the movement.
They
right?
all got a problem.
Yeah, exactly. And
They're like in so many Texas, like suburban, urban areas.
And it's funny, when when I've been in strategy meetings about all right, well, what happens? Because it'll probably get to Texas first, is just with that really exposed border and where the cases are. It'll probably get into Texas first. And so we're like, all right, it's probably more of a concern for us to deal with, screwworm coming from Texas than it is from Mexico. And so we're kind of thinking from that eastern side of our state where we have a bunch of cattle production.
The Texans are coming.
Yeah, we have a bunch of cattle production, and there's a huge wild hog problem there. And so we're like, all right, this is a place that we need to be able to monitor and kind of deal with when it comes to a lot of that is so wild hogs are definitely a concern, and it's kind of like, all right, well, what do we do with them? It's already a problem just from their damage, let alone from now they're going to be carrying screwworm around.
What do you got, Doug?
I got a new band name. It's called the New World Screwworms.
That's like heavy metal. It's like guar.
And the album is called Problem of the Americas.
Yeah, that's a good album. I like that album, man. I could see a band, Problem of the Americas.
Yeah.
That's what
Wouldn't be death metal.
Oh, yeah.
Screwworm is hardcore.
Yeah.
Hardcore death metal.
Yeah.
Like the kind of stuff you wouldn't even want your kids to listen to. That's the kind of music Screwworm makes.
Beyond that, I thought when I saw this title and started reading a little bit about it, I'm like, well, this ought to be interesting. And it's been fascinating.
You came down here thinking you wouldn't be interested? I thought I had you come because I knew you'd be interested.
Well, I didn't know how interested I would be. The whole thing with cattle, I mean, I've, I know you're out of the biz. You cut the antler, the horns off. I just remember this. Blue coat was the blue stuff that it would spray.
Yeah.
Doug was a stockman, but he retired.
Yeah. But so you cut the horns off of cows, and then if you do it too late in the spring, then the flies get in there, and then the maggots do a really great job of cleaning up all of the. I mean, it's just all these weird things you saw in Life and Death on the Farm kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so those were all the images that were going through my head, and I think I've had everything else answered.
Doug, you're going on you have some speaking engagements coming up where you're going to discuss screwworm.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to try to work it into these.
Perform screwworm.
There you go.
Yeah.
Incorporate that into your musical repertoire.
Yeah, where are you going to speak, Doug?
I'm doing some fun stuff. I will be at Pheasant Fest, as I have been for the last several years, and talking on the habitat stage about working with the Fish and Wildlife Service on a project in our on our farm, and I'm also talking on the path to the upland stage about making a contribution to conservation and building a conservation resume. The other couple of talks are really kind of fun. One of them is all of the county conservationists in the state come together for a convention every year, and then they bring in all these other people, and I'm going to be the keynote speaker there, talking about working with landowners to move conservation forward. And then in northern Illinois, a forestry association, sort of the same idea that if we're going to do anything on a landscape level, we really need to involve private landowners, and a great way to do that is through sharing the land and getting things done on private property like burns and that sort of stuff, where you need a lot of people for a short period of time. That's one of the things that we're going to be talking about there, is getting people involved with conservation on private land.
Do you have a way, if people want to check in, if people want to track the activities of Bubbly Doug, where do they go to find out where you're going to be? If someone wants to come meet you or hear you?
Sharingland.com.
And you'll have an events calendar.
Yeah, there's an events calendar there. And then on my website, DougDuren.com, there's an events calendar there too. You can follow me on Instagram and, ignore the stuff that you don't want to read about and pay attention to the stuff that you do, And
then what's the best resource for people that want to read up on screwworm?
Yeah. So I guess a couple things. The USDA and APHIS have done a really good job at kind of putting out a lot of really good resources kind of over time. And so if you just Google screwworm, you'll end up finding some different resources there. If you're kind of interested in what's going on in New Mexico, specifically, or in kind of some of these southern states, so you can go to my website, hubbardlab.com.
Yeah, how'd you wind up with the lab named after you?
Yeah. Well, that's my last name.
No, I got that.
Yeah. So
I'm saying you founded the lab.
Yes.
Because we have a guy on like Monteith. He has his lab. They call it the Monteith shop. Mm-hmm. But he's a researcher that has his own shop.
I will say that I'm just not creative, and so it was one of those things of.
But you founded. I don't mean how'd you wind up. I don't mean why it's named that. But you came in.
Yeah. So
you came in and founded. Like an entomology lab.
Correct. Yeah. So I got hired as an assistant professor at New Mexico State. And so part of my job is I'm 75% research. And so with that was starting a lab to do different projects. And so, we do everything from scorpions, Arizona bark scorpions, to cockroaches, to, we'll probably do some kissing bug work. We do a lot of housefly stuff. We're doing a bunch of screwworm stuff as well.
How many grad students are floating in and around your...
Yeah, so currently I've only been here a couple months, and so I have my first student that's going to be starting here in about a year, but she's an excellent undergrad. I have a technician, I have a couple undergrads. So it's 5 or 6 of us. We're kind of expanding out. Currently, I will say that that's one thing that's fascinating is running a lab. If anyone hasn't talked about this, it's more like a business than I ever thought, because it's finding the money to pay these people, it's supervising them, it's kind of coming up with all that stuff. And so I got hired to kind of do a lot of just cool work, and then screwworm kind of popped up, and it's like, all right, that's where I'm going to shift my focus, at least for the time being. And so hubbardlab.com, on Instagram it's NMSU Urban Entomology.
Do you put up nasty disease photos on there?
So we're kind of we're in that building stage currently where we're just going to be talking about some of the projects, but I think over time we probably will, just kind of informational stuff about screwworm or anything like that. And so yeah, I will say though, if you're looking for specific information, on what is directly going on, USDA kind of updates it on cases that are currently going on. They keep it up to date weekly. APHIS does. And so there's a number of decent resources, and I can provide some of the links and stuff like that if that's something that people want. I guess two of the other things that I would say though is one, the biggest thing that people can do is share this information, right? I've been asked all right, how can we prepare? How can we do anything like that? Just like anything, it's getting the information out there, because that's the biggest thing.
South Texas,
correct.
Southern New Mexico, correct. Southern Arizona, presumably Southern California,
and so that's going to be one of these things. But it's important for everybody to know. We had imported cases in Maryland in a human. And so it's a and so that was a case. You can look at the news headlines. It was maybe October or something like that. There was a guy that came back from an endemic country that had screwworm in his arm or something like that. So it's great,
man.
But again, it's a concern, and so it's not just something that we should be focused in southern New Mexico or South Texas.
Yeah.
And so getting that information out there.
So that's how it could have hit the Florida Keys.
Yeah, and again,
some dude coming in.
Yeah, and there may be. I heard some rumbling that they actually figured it out. From what I knew, they had never figured out exactly where it came from or how the incursion occurred. Because it's kind of strange. It just popped up in the Florida Keys and then we didn't see it anywhere else. But it's just one of these things of getting out there, talking. We all elected a bunch of people, right? And it's great. You had our senator in a couple weeks ago, and I really enjoyed kind of listening to his philosophy when it comes to the outdoors and conservation and everything like that. But I think that it's important to communicate with our elected officials and tell them, hey, this isn't something that is just a concern for this group of people, or it's out of sight, it's out of mind because it's down in Mexico. There's a saying that parasites don't have borders, right? They're just going to hop right across. And so we need to be able to do that. And so communicating with your elected officials, even if it's not finding funding to fund some of the research or anything else like that, it's just saying, hey, this is something that's important to me or could be important. And so I think that that's kind of the big takeaways on finding information, communicating that kind of overall. I guess two other things I guess I would say is, if you want to support kind of our ongoing work, you can donate on my website to kind of our efforts, if it's urban entomology, if it's screwworm, if it's anything like that. Or there's just, it doesn't have to be me. There are lots of other people that are trying to do screwworm work. Yeah. What it comes down to is, we're trying to, especially in New Mexico, I will say, is that we're kind of, grassroots effort on trying to get out, communicate. We don't have the backing like a state like Texas does. And that's something for me is that I don't want New Mexico to be left behind. And it, in a lot of ways, is just kind of like that ugly stepchild, right? And so I want to be able to advocate for the state and be able to put out as much good information and as much good research as any of the other, well-funded and kind of backed states, Texas and California. And so that's why I'm out spending my time communicating this, because it's something that I may not be from New Mexico, but I call myself a New Mexican at this point. And so, yes, I recognize I started the podcast by talking about, New Mexico not being great at a lot of things, but my whole goal is to make sure that we are prepared as we possibly can. And then the last thing is that I do want to hear from people on their knowledge of screwworm, how concerned they are, because one thing that we want to be able to do is develop educational material and material that will resonate with people, if it's producers, if it's hunters, if it's the general public. And we can't get that without feedback. And
in order to get early detection.
Exactly.
And
because that's going to be the biggest thing is the buy-in, right? We need to get people to buy in. And if it's cattle producers, well, we need to get cattle producers to report it. Cattle prices are super high. Is a cattle producer going to want to say, hey, I have this thing, and then they can't move their animals? And so that's where getting hunters involved, explaining to cattle producers, hey, we recognize that, a lot of people have echoes of the way that the most recent pandemic was kind of handled, and you can have your own opinions on how that was handled. But that's not the goal here. Is to kind of it is to control it, and then let's get back to normal. And there's a lot of, I think, learning that can be taken from how we handled COVID, and I know that the government is kind of taking, the government doesn't do a good job at taking opinions, but I will say from the meetings I've been in, people are recognizing, hey, let's not do what we did before if and when it gets here. And so
let's listen to people.
Exactly. And
take
again,
in a diverse set of viewpoints.
Yeah. And that's where it comes down to getting that information from people of, hey, I want to know if you don't care at all. It's like there are some people that aren't concerned about CWD, right? And so with something like that, I want to hear from people and see where their concern is, because if I'm employed and I'm paid by the taxpayers in New Mexico, so I am here to answer to them and to develop information for them overall.
Yeah. Okay, Caleb Hubbard, veterinarian entomologist, the first one we've ever had on the show. Maybe the last.
Maybe.
Not because you did a bad job.
Okay, well.
We're going to switch to forensic entomologist from there.
I will say Jeff does kind of a combination of everything. He does forensics. He does veterinary entomology.
Oh, okay.
He does,
yeah. So not the last.
Yeah. Potentially.
Veterinarian.
Yeah.
It's just we've been at it a long time.
Yeah.
We've only had one on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a statistics man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What are the odds?
Yeah. Well, you had Dr. Schmidt, with the pain index and everything
we've
like
had
that.
other entomologists.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had one other. He's a
you don't
fascinating
know
guy.
it. No one knows if we didn't talk about it. We also had a guest on who happens to be an aquatic entomologist, but he wasn't there to talk about that.
Oh, okay.
So let me redo it. Dr. Caleb Hubbard, one of many entomologists you have heard from and will hear from on the MeatEater podcast. So many entomologists, you can't keep them straight. From the Hubbard Entomology Lab at New Mexico State University, and also the beautiful and lovely Doug Duren. Thanks for joining me.